What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. When it comes down to Lucid presenting, whether it be at events, quarterly earnings, generally it comes off as dry and very scripted. I particularly am not a fan of that. But there was a podcast that was recently done that hands down is the best podcast for Lucid to date, and because it says a lot of the whys. So if you are a true Lucid fan, make sure you guys stay till the end of this video because it goes over a lot of small snippets that gives you a good viewpoint into what Lucid intends on doing in the coming years, such as autonomous driving, China, just the technology aspect as well, and when it comes down to the lower price vehicle. So there's a lot of things that was said in this podcast I'm going to share with you. Before I do though, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So when it comes down to who actually the podcast was with, it looks like it was with Faisal Sultan. Sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly. He is the Vice President and Managing Director of Lucid Middle East. And in fact, he was recently appointed this in October 24th, 2022. So fairly new. This is when I think they were doing a lot of the moving around of VPs, but still very beneficial. And again, I haven't really looked into him too much, but like I said, based on that podcast, hands down, he is the best speaker of Lucid. And I know Jeff Curry, he is the communications expert and the VP in that aspect, but he stuttered so much in his presentation, whatever he did recently. But Faisal, he is the man. He is the man of Lucid because he talks on autonomous driving, why Lucid truly isn't going full force into autonomous driving, why they're not going full force into China, and why they chose a little bit more of a higher class luxury vehicle versus just trying to do a $30,000 vehicle or a lower price vehicle from the get-go. So again, this podcast is a must listen to. It is roughly about 20 minutes or so, but I was listening on to every single word. So I really like this. Definitely let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. So I'm going to go over it. The first part of it is very much oriented towards the technology and why Lucid does in fact stand out. But I am actually going to have chapters throughout the podcast itself, so you just know the general topics per se. So when they're talking about technology or autonomous driving or whatever it is, you generally know what the topic is. But like I said, I recommend listening to absolutely every word. But like I said, if there is some aspect of the podcast that you absolutely love, let me know in the comments below because I can guarantee there's going to be a lot of other individuals in the same boat as you.
You are at Lucid Motors, and I've been following this company from day one. Peter Rawlinson and his concept of a very light battery and a very light motor that powers all four wheels, that was supposed to be part of Tesla, did not become a part of Tesla, is now a part of Lucid, is what's driving this car, this vehicle, and it has blown the doors, literally, of the Porsches, the Mercedes, and everything in the market. Why is that? How is that?
Definitely, I think, as you said, cars have become a technology-based platform. They're not a traditional way of building cars. Really, it's a computer that has a motor attached to it.
Yeah.
And then we, definitely focus on the technology. It's a tech war, as Peter says. We like to be in the front of this tech war where we saw huge gaps. Really, the efficiencies were not there.
Right.
So we talk about sustainability on one hand, but then if the powertrain is not efficient,
right,
then you're not being you're not really doing anything to sustainability.
Right.
So we saw that gap, and then Peter and his team and our leadership team really focused on that to bring the size, the density, the power density of the motor to a brand new level. So we're 4, 5, 6 times ahead of our nearest competitors.
Wow.
And that gives us the edge. Tech is what is driving this company, really.
So as you can see, I mean, this thing is crazy. And I mean, for those who know me, they know how much of a car guy I am. And I've been a petrol head my entire life since I can remember. And I've always thought of cars being sort of with the big engine, the loud noises, the 0 to 60, with feeling the acceleration and the throttle, but at the same time, getting the sound right as well. But here is something that accelerates like nothing else, is the size of an S-Class. and handles like a Lotus Elise. How is that even possible? The mechanics don't make sense. The physics doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's simply amazing what our design and engineering team has been able to do. It has the lowest coefficient drag in the industry right now. So when we talk about the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis and some of the others, companies that have been out there, we've been able to beat them.
That's unbelievable. What's the drag coefficient on this?
0.18.
Wow. So just for those who are not familiar, so drag coefficient is the amount of resistance that is created when a vehicle is moving through air, right? And so the more sleek and streamlined a vehicle is, the less resistance there will be, the faster it can accelerate, the more fuel efficient it will be. And at the time, EVs like the Prius had a very low drag coefficient, and they did really well. They had a camback design with a little like hatch at the back, and that was considered the future. But a 0.18, and at that time, industry standards, if you were at a drag coefficient of 0.21 or 2.5 or 2.4, you were amazing.
Amazing, yes.
And 0.18,
yeah,
that's unheard of.
Unheard of. So, and when you combine that with our motor, which basically gives you about 9 horsepower per kg, and our closest competitor is like 3 point something.
So you're 3 times more powerful
than our closest competitor based out of California.
Which is where your founder actually worked originally.
Exactly. So I think it's going to be like this. It's how do you take something that is not just powerful, but then design really a structure around it that also complements that. It attracts people towards the car.
Right.
So you've seen Lucid, and as the video just showed,
right,
how beautiful it is. People are completely attracted to it as soon as they see the car. Once they get inside, the interior is beautiful. So we're taking and then putting the whole story together. It's not just about powertrain. It's not just about battery. It's not about range only. It's about the design. It's about the attractiveness. It's about the performance at the end of the day as a full package. And that is the gap that was there.
So how is it? I mean, so what you're saying is that is in essence, you are solving the problem of efficient mobility.
Definitely.
And how is that problem different than the one Tesla is solving?
So when Lucid was formed, and then Peter's vision was really to look at the market, and the market really had no luxury electric vehicle offerings. A lot of the other companies were trying, but their performance was so low that people were not getting into these cars. As you mentioned, I was a Mercedes guy before I jumped into a Lucid, and definitely, you like that luxury aspect of the car. And once you were getting into these traditional electric vehicles being offered, such as Tesla or Toyotas, hybrid vehicles, you were not getting that feeling. It was just not available.
But they were very advanced in tech, though. The material feeling wasn't there. I mean, I've driven a Tesla a bunch, and yes, the materials are not there. They don't feel super plush and nice, but the technology is extremely premium.
Yes, and I think it is compared to a combustion engine for sure, but I think there is another level, and that's what Lucid is really bringing to the table, and that's what you will see. There are hundreds of videos out there that are now just comparing our powertrain as a benchmark,
right?
For other companies to follow.
Interesting. And so you mentioned earlier that you wanted to create this sort of experience where powertrain, performance, luxury, all are solved together. Why would you go into a market with a premium offering when the mass market is where the market really is at? I mean, not everyone can afford a vehicle that is, $150,000. I mean, it makes more sense to go in with a vehicle that is $30,000. Why not solve that problem where you can have a much larger audience? And why start with the premium segment?
I think it's, if you look at some of the other electric vehicle companies such as Tesla also, I think their first offering was something very similar, very high priced. And I think there is a reason behind it, because there's a lot of lot of engineering that goes behind these, to solve these equations, and then put the money. The money upfront is a lot of investment, and therefore your first product should be a niche product. And that's where the gap was. We looked at, when we laid out the roadmap, and we looked at what Mercedes is doing, what Audi is doing, and what Volkswagen is doing. There were more companies that were entering the market in the lower segments with a lower performance. We wanted to come out and really prove to the world that this could happen, where you could have a luxury vehicle that has top performance that could beat a Bugatti and then a Model S Plaid. So once that's done, of course, our plans would include to bring lower price vehicles in the future to the general public.
And what's interesting is that while Lucid, and the likelihood of us in Pakistan seeing this vehicle is extremely low, I'm assuming, though it is in our favor that EV taxes and duties are significantly lower. So electric vehicles in Pakistan are much cheaper than a standard combustion vehicle. So when you do make a cheaper vehicle, let us know, we will buy one. But what's interesting is that even though you are based in California, your design studios are in California, you're even doing your production in California, you're predominantly a Saudi company. How does that work? How is Saudi getting into the auto manufacturing business when this is a country dependent entirely on petrodollars?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think so. The Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, which is our largest shareholder, as you're aware, saw the possibility, and that Lucid is really bringing to the table. So
Lucid was existing before they invested in this.
Definitely.
And so Lucid had started off as an idea in what year?
I think we were basically in the early 2010s, 11s, and 12s.
Oh, so it's been around for a while.
Yeah, I think we were formed in 2012.
Right.
If I have my numbers correct, but the company was actually a battery supplier named 𝗖𝗓𝗧, and 𝗖𝗓𝗧 actually supplied to the full Formula E for a long period of time. And,
okay. So that's where they got their performance side and the experience from.
And that's why we are the longest range, car company in the world. The top 6 models in the world are right now Lucid Air variants before Tesla.
800 kilometers,
836 kilometers is our top range.
So you can charge the battery and you can drive basically from Karachi almost all the way to, let's say, I want to say Bahawalpur, if not more, maybe a little bit further.
Maybe a little bit further.
In one charge.
So I think that's where we got our experience. And then, of course, once we had those 20 million miles on our batteries, we decided to jump into the electric vehicle segment also, because it completely made sense. We saw the gap. The luxury vehicles in electric vehicles were not there. And then Public Investment Fund also jumped in and then basically became the majority shareholder of this company. And what's interesting, there are many parallels. In Saudi Arabia, you have the Vision 2030 with His Royal Highness, Mohammed bin Salman. He's basically transforming the company into more of a non-oil-based economy. There are specific targets by 2030 that has to be met, and it is about sustainability. So we fit completely in parallel with that transformation that was happening in the country.
Interesting. And so when Saudi's shifting away from sort of a reliance on petrodollars, one of its initiatives was invest in an electric car company, and this is the one that they found. And I think you're building a manufacturing operation in Saudi as well?
Yes, our first international manufacturing plant outside of United States is being built in King Abdullah Economic City near Jeddah in Saudi. So we're very proud of that, and it's progressing, on target.
Interesting. And so from that, will you supply to the entire Middle East? I mean, where do you see the biggest market for your vehicle? Obviously, North America is the biggest car market in the world, I believe.
Yeah, and well, China
now, of course,
China
yes.
and North America are the two big markets. But for luxury vehicles, Middle East is a huge market.
Right.
Even the European car makers rely on this market a lot. So it's Middle East and beyond from this plant.
Right.
We are definitely, it's not for Saudi, it's not just for the region around it, it's for the full Middle East and beyond even. And it is with a lower price product.
Okay.
So
it won't be the same Lucid Air Touring.
we will assemble the Air, but that will be an assembly operation, and we'll start that pretty soon. End of this year is the target for us to start that. And then by 2025, 2026 timeframe, we are definitely going to have CBU, complete build units, lower price product that we're going to produce for region and plus more.
Interesting. And so you talk about the US, you talked about the Middle East. China does a great job manufacturing very low cost vehicles, and they've managed to scale it. They started the industry, I'd want to say like maybe 15, 20 years ago, really jumping into it. And they're now getting into the battery technology vehicles, and they have a battery electric vehicle that is one of the top sellers. I forget if it's Neo, if I want to get it right.
Neo is there. Yeah, they have few now.
Would a product like this, a very premium product centered on the American market, ever succeed in a market like China where cost consciousness drives, let's say, the average Chinese consumer?
Yeah, I think there's, for the refined customer who knows the differences, the range, the performance, the luxury, I think definitely our product cannot be compared with someone like Neo or some of the other companies there. But for the mass market, I think that's why companies like Tesla has introduced Model 3 and Model Y, and companies like Lucid will also. We will definitely look into that too, as we said. But I think in the future, EV is the way to go. So there's going to be more competition. I think more companies, the traditional OEMs, General Motors has already announced by 2030, everything will be electric vehicles.
All of their cars will be electric.
Yeah, so I think...
So the big supercharged V8s, the 6.2, the LS1, all of them, LS7, all dead.
Go away, unfortunately.
Wow, that's just sad.
So hold on to your classic
seriously. I mean, I'm just now, I'm heartbroken that I won't be able to start a car and hear the engine rumble. I mean, you can hear it in the speakers, because I think some of these EVs now have noises coming out of speakers that are fitted outside. So it sounds like a real combustion vehicle. Interesting. One of the other things that comes to mind is when you're thinking about auto technology, and you touched on this earlier, is that you're in the business of, let's say, mobility and technology, the intersection, right? Vehicle autonomy and autonomous driving are something that are hotly talked about. Tesla talks about it a lot, and in fact talks a lot about why they don't play in the luxury space is because they're taking, let's say, that investment or that use of money, and they're putting it towards autonomy and autonomous driving and self-driving vehicles and stuff. You don't talk about that, or Lucid does not mention that. Lucid talks more about the driver's driving experience and less about autonomy. So let me get this understanding right. Where does Lucid see autonomous driving head in the near future?
So there's two aspects, right? There's the technology capability of the product itself, and then there's the infrastructure readiness, right? So those are the two main things that really are going to make autonomous vehicles, available in all the places. If you don't have one or the other, it doesn't work out, because cars.
What infrastructure do you need for autonomous vehicles?
Cars have to talk to each other, so you have to have connectivity between all cars. That's very important. You have to have monitoring systems, cameras, smart cameras that are communicating, signals that are also tracking the car movement, cars talking to the signals, when is it going to stop, or rerouting of traffic. There's a lot of things that have to be integrated. So there's a lot of tech that is being worked on, but the infrastructure has to be ready, and those are more on the smart cities or city corporations that will have to jump in. The government will have to jump in and into that. So in controlled areas, I think autonomous vehicle for sure will be available, but it's going to be in pockets in the future. It's not going to become that you're going to see it everywhere in the world.
Can you see it in Pakistan?
Anything can happen. Yeah, anything can happen.
So you're saying that autonomous driving, self-driving cars will not be a mass market availability. Smart cities, maybe let's say the urban centers or the capital cities of the world,
more developed
areas.
that has more infrastructure, no power interruptions are happening, connectivity is always there, good network, and then more cars that have the capability to track each other. I think that helps.
So let's take an example of a city like Dubai, right? It's a brand new city, 20 years old. For them to build this sort of infrastructure, they've demonstrated they can do this. For them to move to a completely autonomous city or self-driving city, let's say within a certain parameter, should not be a problem.
Yeah, I think if they put their mind and money to it, I think they can definitely do it. Riyadh definitely now is basically upgrading the city as we talk. So they're making areas that are going to be smart zones. And if that happens, I can see definitely, cars being autonomous.
And obviously, other than, sitting and watching TikTok videos on your phone while your car drives itself, what other benefits are there of autonomous driving?
Well, personally, I think I like driving the car, and I think I know you also do. So even when we have people who can drive us around, we just feel that urge to get behind the wheel and have our fun. So I think that is always going to be there for some of us, and we might not push that button of autonomous too many times, and some of us might do that and sit in the back and read the newspaper or something like that. But I think it's going to be more of a personal preference rather than all of us taking that option on. There's other issues with autonomous also, and I think who is controlling the car when an accident
what if someone hacks into your car? Exactly. It takes control, and there's been movies made about this.
Cybersecurity is going to be huge, right? So all of that has to really.
I can imagine that. So right now, just with the whole crypto boom over the last 2-3 years, so many accounts with cryptocurrency in it were hacked and the money was taken away. And there's nothing that you can do about it because no laws, regulations don't exist. Similarly, in autonomous driving, what if someone hacks in your car and takes you and drives you off a cliff or, runs a red light? There's all sorts of things that can happen.
Definitely. And I think that's why it's taking that long of a time. It's not just a technical capability issue. It's the whole ecosystem, the litigation, how are we going to protect each other, and how is the financial industry, the legal industry, how is it going to view it? So the insurance industry is a huge, player, stakeholder. So,
so will the regulation, do you think in this case versus crypto? So crypto regulation seems to be following the market and the industry progression, right? It's coming afterwards. Will regulation come here before because human lives are at stake?
I think so. I think regulation has to catch up, and it has to be, the framework has to be there before any of these car companies, full-fledged autonomous vehicles, come on the road.
Interesting. What happens to those people who enjoy driving? That sensory experience of driving. And again, as someone who's been a motorhead their entire life, you cannot detach. An electric vehicle can never, ever recreate the sensory experience of a combustion vehicle. The experience of putting the gear in, the clunking, the mechanical clunking of a gear going into place, the clutch being pressed and the right time, the clutch plate and the flywheel make contact and the car launches, and the acceleration and the sound of the exhaust and the, feeling of how it all comes together. None of that exists in any electric vehicle I have ever driven. And I've even driven the GM's EV1 on General Motors proving grounds when I used to work there. Great acceleration. All of them have great acceleration. But if I want that sensory experience where everything is coming together and I feel everything, the steering's directness and the sound of the motor, what happens? Does that all go away after 2030? Because if everyone's making electric vehicles, where's the fun and joy in motoring?
I think people will continue to drive, their favorite vehicles. They will keep them up to date. But I think it's, I agree with you. That's exactly how I used to think until I got at least into the Lucid Air. variants, I'm just simply blown away from the performance. The acceleration is one thing, but it's the total package, right? As we talked about earlier. And it's more of a getting used to it, I think. So, I'm getting used to it, and I'm driving my Lucid Air now. I enjoy driving it as much as I was, enjoying driving a Corvette or a Dodge Viper,
Right.
at some point in time. So I think we will all adopt sooner or later. Some might take later, more time,
Right.
or it will take them a few more years. But some will be early adopters, we're hoping.
And you think the combustion engine will be dead? Let's say in 10, 15 years, no cars will have a combustion engine?
Yeah, I think 10, 50, the car park, which is the number of cars that are in the world, I think is huge.
What is the car park today?
I don't know. I think it's like, I've heard 4 billion, 5 billion cars, and that
I mean,
are
the
on
US is selling close to
like
18,
12, yeah, anywhere from 12 to 18.
12 to 18 million cars a year.
Yeah, and then, China is like 20 plus now.
Yeah.
So, even with those numbers, even if everything becomes electric vehicle, it's going to take a long time before you see majority of the cars in the world being EV vehicles on the road.
So if there's 4 billion cars in the universe, in sort of not the universe, in the earth, of that, even if every year every American buys an electric vehicle and every, let's say, Chinese person buys an electric vehicle, and that adds up to, let's say, 38, 40 million cars.
Yeah, that's going to take a while.
It's going to take, it's going to take a long time.
So combustion vehicles will be there. I think the whole point is that electric vehicles, the new cars, new technology that are coming in, it's all about sustainability. At the end of the day, we need to do something to save the world. We can see what's happening. The floods in Pakistan that just recently happened, with all the, the weather patterns are changing. We can see that, droughts.
Hottest summer in Britain.
Exactly.
Hottest winter in England as well.
Exactly. And then, we had the floods in Pakistan.
The floods were devastating.
The California drought, I think that lasted for like 7, 8, 9 years. We're still in the drought.
The wildfires that are increasing.
So I think we need, as responsible citizens of the world, this is our contribution to give back, because we have to, realize that transportation is one of the major contributors of
pollution
in the world. So definitely this electric vehicles helps towards that. The more electric vehicles that get on the road, I think it'll be better for the world. And more of the combustion, especially the very old combustion engine vehicles that in places where there's no emission controls.
Right.
So I think that if they're off the road, lower cost EVs are available for people to buy. I think that's going to help. And combined with the solar energy, taking really some of the load off the grid, and then just using the renewables, the wind energy, the solar energy, and combining it to charge your vehicles, I think that's going to have a very net positive effect on the environment.
Interesting. I mean, I have a prediction. I think that, with your industry, mobility and autonomy, that's where things will be headed. So your daily driver will be like an appliance, like a toaster or a microwave. You get into it, it takes you where you need to go, in a lap of luxury, in good acceleration, and it does it right at obviously different price points of affordability. But for the true enthusiast, for the motoring gearheads, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be this whole side market that develops of these custom companies that take traditional cars, the older vehicles, customize them, upgrade them to modern standards, and create that visceral driving experience that you can then enjoy on the weekend. So if some people like to play golf, some people like to go driving, they'll have a separate vehicle for the motoring experience, while their daily driver will be this appliance, this autonomous mobility appliance that technology seems to be headed towards.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I think let's see where the wind takes us. Right. There's too many possibilities with the technology that's coming out.
True. And my last question to you is that you're sitting at the forefront of the intersection of mobility and technology. You've spent 25 years in the automotive industry, and you're someone who grew up in Karachi, and you are now doing this. Tell me how, let's say, the young graduates sitting in Pakistan, they're looking at, this kind of a career path the industrial engineers, the auto engineers, the mechanical engineers who want to be at the forefront of technology, but all of that is outside Pakistan. What are some of the traits they need to have or demonstrate to have this similar career path as you?
Okay, so I think that's an interesting question because I loved cars from my childhood. I think same as you.
Right.
And that was the reason why I became a mechanical engineer. At that time, everything, about automobile was mechanical engineering. To the new generation, I think they even have more options, right? So there is the mechatronics, the electronics, the electrical engineering itself, a combination of all of those, bachelor's, master's, being a tech person, just cybersecurity, you could be part of, an electric vehicle value chain. So the options have really grown. For me, it was not that easy, to really get out of my comfort zone. Living in United States, I moved out of here when I was 16 years of age on my own, and then started going to universities in Detroit area, just because I knew Ford was there, GM was there, Chrysler was there, and all the supply chain was there. So most likely I will end up in one of those companies. And so people have to look at what they want to do, what's their passion, what will keep them going. I get up and I get excited to get into a Lucid here, just as I was excited at that time engineering the 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗧 truck parts. So and that's my advice to the youngsters is lay out a plan, a long-term plan for themselves. What do they want to do? But it has to be based on their passion. Don't pick your profession based on how much it will pay, but what will keep you happy at the end of the day, because that's what drives us at the end. We can all make money, but then we get bored.
That's true.
We will change professions mid-age, and that's not where you want to be.
No, that's a very good point. And in fact, I'm reading this book by Viktor Frankl. It's something about In Search of Meaning. And one of the points that he raises is that man's true state of happiness is if they have a meaning to live their life. And if they're living towards this vision or this goal or this meaning. And so if you're chasing money, that's not really a meaning, because you might get it then. And then what?
It won't last.
It won't last. So you really must be passionate what you are. And so that's what you've done with your career. Best of luck. I really hope you're able to bring Lucid to Pakistan. I know we don't have the roads in Karachi for it, but definitely Punjab has some fantastic roads, and speed limits are not as much of a problem here. So we can really test the top speed of that thing. And thank you for the time.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
So like I said, was that not the best podcast ever? Absolutely love that. Hopefully there's a lot more of these kind of podcasts in the future. Not, like I said, so much scripted. But like I said, let me know your favorite aspects of this podcast. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Always greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel, want to support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With that said, appreciate you guys watching. Let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.